Maybe YouTube's favorite golfer, Fat Perez, has a beautiful swing. He's not a guy that you want to meet in a match play. He'll probably kick your butt. And I always like looking at amateurs on YouTube that have simple swings that we can learn a lot from. So let's dive in and see the four main things that I like from Fat Perez's swing that we can all use a little bit more of in our swing. The first thing you'll see, pretty narrow stance, not very wide, which kind of gives us a tip here that he's not going to have a super long, big backswing. If you have a narrow stance, it's going to be hard to keep your balance if you take a big swing. So short and simple, that's why he's so consistent on his ball striking. From here, let's take a look, get back to shaft parallel and take a look at his position here. One thing I like here is that to get to shaft parallel, he didn't use a big shoulder turn. He used his hands and his arms to get to this position, which is setting himself up for really good sequencing between his hips and his shoulders. The other thing you'll see here is that his shaft is aimed about where he is aimed. Everything's in line at this point in the swing, and his club face is perfectly square in comparison to his spine angle. Now, if we move up to arm parallel in his backswing, you can see now his arm is aimed at the same position in the fairway that his shaft was aimed at shaft parallel. Again, everything is nice and in line with where he's trying to hit the ball. Another thing you see here is his transition at the top is going to be a very simple one. And so what he's doing with the shaft at this position is almost pre-setting it to be shallow. That is usually more of a personal preference. Some people, myself included, I like a steeper shaft on the backswing and then let myself have time to shallow it in the transition. Again, personal preference. You see success both ways. Now, as we get to the top here, you see a pretty simple turn. We'll get to the top of the transition. You can see here, he has completed his backswing. If you notice, his weight is into his front side or will be very, very soon, and his shoulders are still closed to their maximum shoulder turn. Again, that goes back to our takeaway here. His shoulders are staying sequenced with his hips. If his shoulders started too soon, he'd be out of sequence and it would be an arms dominant swing. He's keeping his shoulders turned as his hands finish his transition. That way he can now deliver the club head with his shoulders and his core and not his hands and arms steering the golf ball. And one thing to note, if you look at his hips, pretty much aimed right at his target, his shoulders are almost a 90-degree turn. Impressive flexibility, and a big reason why he's able to have such good ball striking and such a well-timed swing is he has a lot more flexibility than most of us. From here, you can see he's going to drop his hands, and that golf shaft is going to look a lot like it did in the backswing when he preset it to be quote-unquote shallow. Again, not a coincidence that he's in the same similar position that he was in the backswing. Whether he's done this on purpose, which I know he's very, very intentional with his golf swing, or this is just kind of how his golf swing has always been. I really like that he's simply just mirroring his downswing to his backswing. That makes things very simple, a lot less to go wrong. Now, as we get into shaft parallel with the ground here, it looks like we didn't have slow-mo, so the shaft is not quite parallel with the ground. You're going to see if it was in slow-mo, that club face would be perpendicular with the ground. That indicates a square club face. It's always a checkpoint that I like to use in my swing. Is my club face square at shaft parallel in the downswing? And it is if that club face is perpendicular with the ground. Another thing here that, whether it's a symptom or a cause of a good swing, the tucked right elbow. He has a nice on plane into out swing path on his way down, and the amount of daylight you see between his left and right arm and that tucked right elbow is allowing him to swing inside the golf ball and not come over top of it and potentially lead to a slice. Now, as we get to impact here, one thing I think, if I could offer a suggestion to Fat Perez, is keep those hips back a little bit. It'll give him more room to bring his hands through and provide a more consistent impact position. You can see he slides towards the golf ball just a little bit, which can make ball striking difficult on some days. But overall, a very balanced position at impact, which is why he's so consistent and why he's such a good golfer. Now let's watch this swing in full speed one time through, and You know, I bet that this ball is going to go right where he's aimed because everything looked really good in this swing. Dead straight, right where he was aiming, right in the middle of the fairway.